So if you can't throw sidearms with putters or mid-ranges too well, this might be the video for you. Maybe it won't be, but maybe it will be. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a few shots here with some varied putters. Actually just saw putters today. Um, Back here to one of these poles here. I'm only going about 160 feet roughly. But if you have difficulty with putter throwing on sidearms, again, like I said, this might be for you. Stay tuned.
So the first thing I'm going to get into is just how you hold it. It's one of those things where if you're using a driver, I'm not the best sidearm thrower with drivers, but I'm okay. I can get by when I need to. But on like a driver, this here is a Shrike, but anything with a rim that's, at least somewhere in this size or bigger. For me personally, I end up holding them like this. Just kind of a stack grip. Just kind of put this kind of on the edge here. Not on the top, but definitely on the edge, kind of like in the crease there. So I just kind of put them in there like that, and then one's just kind of stacked on top of the other. A lot of people use that. Some people will maybe put more fingers in, or maybe even just use a single. It's up to you. As with a lot of stuff in disc golf, I feel like half the time it's just kind of what works for you. I don't know if there is a right or wrong for a whole lot of people. Some people can throw turbo putts and make amazing shots from 100 feet away. That's not me. But anyway, so on a driver, most people are fairly aware of trying to have some sort of similar stack or single finger or whatever on the inside here, and then you're just kind of pinching on top here to hold the disc and let it rip out of your hand. Well, when it gets down to like putters and mids, the problem I have mostly is just that they're so thin. It's one of those things where when you don't have much thickness here, especially if it's something like a polecat or a birdie, I mean, they're really hard to grip. At least it's wildly different than using a driver. So one thing I would suggest usually on putters is just to try and use one finger. I feel like as you're trying to throw them through, you get a cleaner release a lot of times with just a single finger. And maybe as you get more used to it, you can try and do the stack and then just see where you end up from there. In the last year and a half or so here, I've been trying to make an effort every now and again to go ahead and practice with these a little bit more, and I've been doing so, and I'm still not great at it, but I didn't used to throw putters at all for upshots, but I'm decent with the drivers, but they have a lot of weird ground action after you throw them, so I'm trying to go down to something that's a little more blunt, which again, a Berg is about as blunt and as dead of a disc as you're going to throw. I mean, people think zones are kind of dead or they're like bricks when you throw them. Well, all I can tell you is that from doing this for the last couple months or so here, somebody got me into trying the Bergs just because I liked how well they landed. And I absolutely hate these for backhands, especially if you're trying to throw these as mid-range distance. The way that this fits in your palm perfectly, just for me, creates grip locks. I can't let go of them. But for sidearms, you're only just grabbing the pinch there, and it's not a big deal. So at any rate, I started trying to use these for just approach shot field practice. And I will say this: if you can make this thing fly far, then all of a sudden discs like an Aviar X3 or even a Zone will automatically start flying much further, because this is it's literally like throwing a brick. It just doesn't want to go anywhere fast. It has no glide. If you can get this there, I guarantee you that distance on discs like these, which are probably more in the realm of like what people would use for approaches for with a sidearm flick, maybe like Toros or Gators, anything that's semi-stable, anywhere from the Aviar 3 say on up. Not to say you can't use a regular plain putter like a Wizard or just a Challenger or something, but they're probably not going to hold up to the torque as much and turn over. So at any rate, that's kind of my advice just on this. I'm going to go ahead and throw a few here and see where we end up. I'm just using my phone today, so I'm not going to have any zoom or anything special here. I'm just going to kind of set it up, throw some out there, and kind of check out where they're at. And that, let's go on to the next.
Okay, so what I'm going to start with here first is, well, all I've got here are zones, Aviar X3s, and some Bergs. Actually, I have a couple Berg X's and then just a regular Berg. They're not a whole lot different from each other, really. They're both like bricks. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start with a couple of Bergs. Overall, the Bergs, I feel like you really got to go ahead and give them some angle. They're not understable, but again, they also don't have a whole lot of glide, so you got to really kind of whip them up and give them some definite angle, or it's just not going to get there. So try that. Here's first. A Berg. Let's go into that phone pole right there. That actually looks like it's pretty on point, maybe just a little long. Here's a Berg X. Now that one I released definitely way too much too early. Go ahead and try a couple more Bergs here. Here's back to the regular Berg again. That looks pretty good. Yep, I actually hit the pole. And here's a Berg X. That's looking really good too. Maybe about 15 feet. Alright, so now I'm going to go over to the Aviar X3s. Probably going to pull it maybe a little flatter, but you know, they're a little more stable. Now that one I actually pulled entirely too far over. I think the wind's kind of messing with it here. There's a little bit of wind blowing this way. Looking better. Got a little bit of fade back. Another Aviar X3. And that one I turned over. So, stepping up to the zones now. One there was a little early, but ended up pretty close to the target. There's another zone. That one might actually hit it. Yep, that one's about 10 feet. And here's another zone. And that one looks like it's right on too. Okay. Let's go up here and take a look at where these are at. Okay. Yeah, so these here, again, I'm only throwing these about 160 feet or so. And again, I'm still kind of trying to figure out a couple of these discs as to how flat or how much angle I need to put on them. So, if we take, starting in near the phone pole here. And right off we'll see, several of these are really close here. We got one of the Bergs, that's a zone, that's a Berg right on it, here's the zone. Got one just behind me here a little bit, that's a Berg. So even this one here is only about 30 feet. These here, it's about 15 maybe. This one here, maybe about 10, 12. This one over here. And again, it's about 12 feet or so. And this one here, even though this one was pulled over fairly far, this one's still inside of 25, I'd say. Let me check it out here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a quarter. So yeah, that one's well inside. The only one that really I messed up on is this one way back here. And I can't remember if this is the first or second one that I threw that was the X3, but this one here leaves quite a bit of a putt. This is probably about 45 maybe. But, and then actually here's another one. This one here, these were both the ones that I turned over extra. And again, part of that's just learn the angle and how much you need to put on it with what's going on here. I think I feel a little bit better with the zones and the bergs. Again, even though that the bergs aren't really all that stable, they don't get affected a whole lot either. So if you put it on a line, a lot of times it's pretty much going to stay where it's at. You just might need to make sure you got the height, and at least as long as it's not like a crazy headwind, it should end up in a pretty good spot. So kind of the same thing with the zone. The zone really, as long as you're not putting crazy amounts of power on it, it won't flatten out and go way along. So usually it's stay on a pretty good line too. Probably the overall suggestion for most stuff is if you've got the space, throw them high, throw them up and out, give them some good angle to them to come in on a hyzer. If you're throwing them flatter, it just depends on what your goal is. I mean, if you've got a corridor you're trying to throw it down, that's one thing. If you're out here in the open like this in a field and you're just trying to get from point A to point B, a lot of times the best throw is just something that's going to come up and then the hyzer in. Again, you don't necessarily want to throw it, 45 feet up in the air, but getting it up, 10 to 20 feet is usually a pretty comfortable area, maybe a little higher depending on how long the shot is. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and collect these up and probably throw another round here real quick and just kind of see how those end up too. Okay, so we're going to be in the wooded area here a little bit. I'm going a similar distance. I haven't stepped it off yet, but it's looking pretty similar, like maybe somewhere between 150 and 170 feet. And with here, I'm looking to go kind of in this little pocket right here. So if we zoom in here, you got several trees here to beat, and there's kind of like a inner area right here, kind of sort of like right inside of all these trees here. I'm mainly trying to, I guess, miss like this biggest one right here, and then just end up just inside that circle area back there. And we're gonna throw some backhands as well here, but let's go ahead and try. Okay, so here we go. First thing I'm going to try here is a Berg X. I'm going to go up this left side here and see how that works out. That hit a limb, it was a little bit high, but other than that, it was up in the right spot. With another regular Berg here. That's right there. Go ahead and go with an Aviar X3 this time. Same line. Yep, right in the pocket. Boom. Throw a few backhands just up the right hand side here. That was dead down the middle there. So let's go back here to an X3, left side. A little too straight. Okay, here's another upper right hand side. Yep, right there. Okay, so here's another zone. Yep, it's right there. Here's a bird. Yep, it's right there. Hit the tree, but that's close. Here's an X3. Something about those X3s, I'm just pulling a little too straight. Bird. Right up there. Zone. Yep. Zone again. There we go. So, looking at it overall here, I mean, we'll go and walk up and see where they're at, but most of them are pretty darn close to that main central mid tree there, getting into that little cove. Let's go ahead and take a look at where they're at. Here we are coming up on these, and here we go. A bird right here, which is a little short. This here actually hit the big tree here. And this just right here is just generally the area I was trying to get to. There's one of the birds. Here's the next three. And ultimately, This zone right here is probably pretty much about dead center where I was looking to be. And kind of seeing a pattern forming here is that pretty much most of these are all within about 20-25 here, except for X3s that ended up being pulled a little left. So I need to, I guess, just trust those a little less and give them a little more. So there you go. You know, may not be the best putters with sidearms video ever developed, but yeah, just something from somebody that tends to struggle with that particular thing the most out of the shots that I typically throw, and getting a little sick of the driver rollaways when you're throwing something that's a little more stable. Nothing like hitting a pinpoint from 200 feet and then it ends up 45 feet away because it hits and rolls. So that's kind of what I'm trying to avoid with that. But anyway, you know, as always, you know, nothing's going to be perfect. And the one thing I learned a little bit more today by throwing this particular bag today is that the X3, yeah, I need to not trust it as much and give it just a little more height like I would the Berg, with a little more angle. So, you know, it's just all getting a little more exposure time with them and kind of learning the disc. And when you're out here throwing a couple of them at random distances, all basically brand new off the shelf, not knowing exactly what they're going to do anyway, that's always a little bit of a challenge. So anyway, hope that helps somebody out. Other than that, have a good one and keep flying.